and welcome to Wrong Way. And today we're gonna take a look at a cargo bike, the Riese and Müller Load 60. So let me tell you more about it. Wrong Way. So I've wanted to try one of these out for a long time already. I was talking with several companies, but never really a bike like this arrived in Warsaw for me to test. But thanks to the generosity of Rafał, I got his bike for testing for a couple days. He has a couple of these bikes for himself, for his family, and yeah, it's pretty cool. The story goes like this. I met him basically right there on the bridge. I stopped him and we talked a bit, and basically I asked him about the bike. We added each other on Facebook, and his kid is now learning how to ride the M10-3, and Rafał got me this e-bike for testing for a couple days, which is amazing. We'll take a look at several things here in this review. Number one, this review is from a PEV rider's perspective, so not that much of a bicycle riders, because even the bicycles I ride are, 70 kilometers an hour or faster. But I also tried some, legal bicycles, so I more or less know how fast they should be and, what the overall experience is. We will look at the specs of this bike, we'll look at the performance, the comfort, the ride, and we'll also take a look at its value. Is it a good bang for the buck? Is it a good value for money? And at the end, we'll also conclude if this bike is maybe for you or not. Okay, so naturally, this is a electric cargo bike, and it's called the Riese and Müller 60. It's not the biggest one in their lineup. There's also a 75, which is even longer. This is sort of their, medium lineup. It has a Bosch motor here, which is advertised to have 75 Newton meters, but right away I can tell you this bike is not at all speedy. It's not speedy at all, but we'll get into that a bit later. Now, this is also the high speed version, so it is unlocked. The limit isn't 25, it can go up to 40, 45 if you pedal hard enough, and you will have to pedal hard enough. And it also has an additional battery here. So these two batteries are removable, these two Bosch units, 36 volt, so not that high of a voltage, 500 watt hours. So both of these combined have the same battery size as the Tesla, which is right there. So these batteries are also removable. We have a key for it, but I'll get into that in a second. Now, we didn't weigh this bicycle, and we will weigh it back at home because we forgot about it. But this bike is rather heavy. To lift, I can't do it, but it's rather heavy. And the maximum load is 200 kilograms. So you sit here, and here in the front there are several configurations. You can have a cargo configuration, so the sidewalls are a bit higher. You can have a cover, so your stuff doesn't get wet. This is a configuration for, as you can see, two little young passengers with seat belts. So we can have two kids there, a bit of a spare room, and also the additional glove box right here for stuff, which comes at a upsell of 60 euro, I believe. Boom. So the range of this bike should be anywhere around 100 kilometers, and I think it's this range not really because the batteries are big. For example, the range of the Tesla is around 50-60 kilometers at the same speed basically of this bike, but this bike just has very little pedal assist. So yeah, this is basically why this range is so huge. I didn't do a full range test, but I did around 35 kilometers on this e-bike, and one bar is gone, and I rode only in the highest possible setting, so I believe it's like very, very probable that this bike has a 100 kilometer range, which is pretty cool. We also did an acceleration test of this bike, and once again, this bike is really slow. Like, you will need to change gears a lot to just have some speed, some overtaking. It can get to 30, 35, even 40 kilometers an hour, but 40 kilometers an hour isn't really comfortable to pedal at least for me, for a cycling noob. Probably if you have stronger legs, you're fine with that. Now we'll do a acceleration test, 0 to 40. So let's go. All right, 10 to 20, pedaling hard, 30, and I won't reach 40. 37. The 20, 30, and can I get the 40? I can't. Yeah, oh, 40. So a little background to these numbers. Actually, it's pretty quick with pedaling because it is as fast to 30 as a Cabo Mantis stock model. But the background here is that if you don't pedal hard, it's kind of slow. So most of the time you'll find yourself doubling or maybe having the acceleration 50% less fast than in these results. But of course, compared to a wheel at a third of a cost, the wheel will get to 50 in 4 seconds, the same time it takes the bike to 20. For me, the comfortable speed is anywhere around 20-25 kilometers an hour. That's where I have like the optimum amount of strain and motor power. So this Bosch motor is set up, so there's like 4 stages basically. You can see them here. 4 stages of assistance. So the harder you pedal, the more exercise you get, and that's sort of a feeling of a bicycle. And the sad part is that even if you pedal quite hard at a high speed, it still won't give you that much of assistance. So you really need to strain yourself hard to get this maximum amount of assistance, especially when climbing hills and at a lower gear. I was trying a 15-degree hill, or like 13 right there, and even when I was going up there, it was just 2 at the assistance scale. So really I wish that there was some sort of mode that allows you to get the maximum amount of assistance regardless of how hard you're pedaling. And naturally there is no thumb throttle, there is no throttle here. It's a fully legal bike, of course, depending on where you live. This is a high-speed version, so it's, for example, like a S-Pedelec in France, and I believe in the Netherlands as well. And there is also a regular version which is not high speed, and it's limited to 25 kilometers an hour. So that is that. It's also limited naturally by the law factors. Okay, so this will be our 10-degree test on a pretty high gear, so easy pedaling. Let's see how it goes. It's rather easy actually. It's rather easy. Bike has a lot of torque. I'll try also in higher gears. In higher gears I can't really do it. I wonder which gear that was. Of course, the higher the gear, the more difficult it will get, but this is not really torquey in these gears. I'll try now on the 3rd gear or 4th gear. And this is basically the limit of comfort that I have when going up with this speed, which is around 10-15 kilometers. And this is the 4th gear. Okay, now so we are at the 15-degree climber location. It's like maybe 13, and as you can see, I can't really go there going forwards because I wouldn't be able to turn around. Okay, I think this is enough. And we are in 1st gear. Oh. Okay, 1st gear is doable. I'm curious if 2nd gear is doable as well. Oh. The problem is it's just giving me like 2 bars of power instead of the whole thing. Well, it is doable, but it's definitely not easy. And I wish there would be just some sort of handle or throttle where I can just mash the throttle, start riding, and then activate the PAS system, because the PAS just activates if I make a turn. It activates really quickly, which is great, but I wish it would just be a throttle here, because it just doesn't activate on full power when I do these sorts of hill climbs. And you know, in a hilly city, if you live there, you'll use the low gears a lot. So moving on, I can show you a bit on the handlebar here. The handlebar is really clean when it comes to quality. It looks also pretty good. I like the grips, everything looks pretty pro. There's the button for high beams and low beams, and in the high speed version the lights are always on, and the light is phenomenal. Like one of the best lights I've seen on PEVs. It's great, it doesn't blind people, it's really, really good. There's a main screen which shows you the battery percentage. There's a light button which does nothing because it's not connected to the light, which is funny. Some info, and the screen is also in German. So if you want to know what your time is, then this is the Uhrzeit. Fun fact, I just seen somewhere there's the battery level. Yeah, and here you have two battery levels. They're both at 4 bars, so like probably 70% of the battery, or 80. So here on the left side you can see the modes, and here you press the assistance. I was always using the highest mode. It still wasn't enough for me to give like enough of a boost. And then always, if you turn on and off the bike, you need to press to the max to make the assistance available, so it doesn't remember your last preset. There's also a really loud horn, which is like a car grate, and I wish there was also a bell. I mean, you can buy a bell, but this is pretty aggressive on the bike path. There's also a mirror, which comes standard in a high-speed version. This unit is also adjustable in the height, the handlebar, and you can also adjust the tilt here. So for me, it's a bit too far off. If you look at my position here, I'm hunching forward a bit too much. I could move it back and then it would be more comfortable, which is pretty cool. When it comes to just the components here, they're just okay. So this is a pretty expensive bike. I'll tell you the price a bit later, but the components are just okay. The seat, really comfy. Nothing to complain about here. The suspension is a X Fusion. I looked it up on the internet. It's just really basic. And the great thing about this cargo bike is also that it has rear suspension. I would say it's okay, comfortable. Nothing more, nothing less. You know, I've ridden on the Cycle e-bikes, which is now called Bear e-bike, and they're way more comfortable, obviously. But this sort of does the job. It's just a really simple coil spring, which costs like 80 euro or maybe less. On the front we have a Asar Santur with 70 millimeters of travel, which is also just okay. It's fine. It's a suspension it's a fork designed for cargo bikes. When it comes to the wheels, we have a 20-inch, I believe, in the front, pretty wide as well, and then the rear is a 26-inch wheel. And I think this is also where all the trouble with the torque comes from, because we have a fairly small motor, mid-mounted motor, and the wheel in the rear is really large. And the bigger a wheel is, the less torque you'll have, the more power you need to deliver to achieve the same level of torque or acceleration. I really think that if we would have a smaller wheel in the rear, it would be much better. When it comes to the brakes, they're also pretty good actually. When it comes to just the brake unit, it's a hydraulic brake, Tektro brakes, 4-piston, front and rear, really good. But the rotors aren't really that good. They're just regular, off-the-shelf parts, really cheap, not floating, it's not strengthened material, just regular 200 millimeter rotors, which will do the job just fine. We have a transmission in the rear, which is how many gears? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 gear. And you will find yourself using these gears a lot. You can change them here on the handlebar. Really simple, works really well. The bike does come with a key, and this key also opens all the things that are on this bike, but you can't actually turn off and lock the bike, which is really interesting. There is an app for Android and both iOS, but it has so low ratings I can't be bothered to install it for the Bosch motor. So this key, number one, with this key you can get the battery off, for example this one, and then you can just take the batteries home and charge them there. It comes with and naturally you can also charge both of the batteries at the same time. And the batteries are just very cheap, I would say. So basically it's just 40 cells in each battery. This thing should be really cheap for purchase, but I believe it's worth a fortune at Bosch.
And I was right. In fact, the price of a single battery with the same parameters of the scooter in the next picture costs more than a scooter with the battery inside. Oh, Bosch.
And the key also does open the lock, which is like an automatic lock for the rear wheel. Boom. But you can also put a chain into here if you want to leave it somewhere. So then you just open both of them, you put this chain in, you move this, and now the bike is locked to a pole or something. It has a loop so you can put it around a bicycle rack. And then you just basically leave the key inside when you're riding. The controller which delivers the power is also a square controller. You can tell by just accelerating. There's a whine, which is typical, also very, very cheap. Not a sine wave controller, not a FOC controller, just really cheap. Moving on, I really also like the taillight of this bike. It's really bright. Sadly here it broke off. This part is made of aluminum and the owner didn't yet put it back together, but it's really bright, the LEDs. One more issue is that I hit with my left foot against the battery here. So the mounting of this battery is not really perfect and my feet are just regular size, like 43, 44. And even though this kickstand is really robust and stable, sometimes it's just really hard to put this bike on it. And I wish there was just some sort of smaller kickstand on the side to just lean it when the additional stability of these two kickstands isn't really needed, just like you have in mopeds or like seated scooters. Yeah, that's basically a walk around of all the parts that are installed on this e-bike. Now we'll move on up to the right a bit and I can show you the turning radius. So you can stay there. I'll just try to make a circle. So this is the turning radius. It's definitely a bigger bike than, you know, a longer bike than all the others, but you know, it's a cargo bike, so that's what it's supposed to do. And finding myself on the bicycle path, it wasn't really an issue when it comes to the width. It was really easy to just maneuver on it. It feels sturdy, it feels stable. I think the comfort was just fine on this e-bike. It wasn't nothing really amazing or spectacular. It was okay. And I really liked turning on it because of the long wheelbase. In bumps, it was also just fine. The problem I encountered is when living, for example, in an apartment. I live in an apartment, my elevator is not long enough for this e-bike. I had to just lift it up and then I could put it into the elevator. And in very tight spaces, if you need to turn around somewhere, it's a bit more difficult on this bike, but it's doable. Like, it's not that hard of a deal. The biggest issue is, once again, when the ride is just a acceleration curve, just a torque curve. It's really, I think, just not enough in this e-bike. And now I can move on to the purpose and the value of this e-bike, because this e-bike, as it stands here, it's above 6,000 euro. It's rather expensive. They go up to 8,000 euro, these e-bikes. And you know, you can have a lot of stuff for that money. And the thing is, like, I know stuff can be expensive, but if it has a purpose that is good enough, it propels people to buy it. So for me, when I was using this bike, I just felt the best purpose for it is if you have children, you can put them in here and you will have a fun ride on this e-bike and you will enjoy it a lot. And you know, you can't go on bicycle paths with a car. So if you compare it to a car, it's really not comparable to that, because it's a totally different experience and it's really nice to ride with your kids here. And all in all, riding a bike, it's a pretty cool experience. And when it comes to practicality, I really can't say that it's more practical than a unicycle, because a unicycle is way smaller. You can get 2 backpacks. You will more or less get the same amount of stuff in there as on a cargo bike. Like, you know, you can buy, I don't know, a fridge, and you can't really transport a fridge in here. It's really hard to convince a purchase of a cargo bike for the cargo in this case, because I can really just take the same amount of stuff on a unicycle. It'll be faster, it'll be more comfortable, I need less space for it. etc., etc. The issue is the legality. So for example, in Germany, you can't have an electric unicycle, so that's why you would buy something like this. The next thing is practicality, and if you don't have a place for your bicycle to store, it's also quite a bit of a hassle. Like it's really not practical to get it into your apartment, and unless it's ginormous. And it's probably the best if you have a house and your own garage, because then you just park it in your garage, you charge it there, and you take the stuff right away into your home. Because even though if you take a lot of stuff, you still need to carry it from the garage to your home. So in this case, a EUC or a electric scooter even would be more practical. And just talking about the price to performance, this is also what gets me a lot, because this bike isn't really fast, it doesn't accelerate a lot, and the components are just fine. So I can't really, select all these components and say to you that yes, this is worth 7,000 euro, because it's not. It's rather the quality, of the frame, all the build quality, how it's assembled, but still I can't say that it's worth that much. It's really rather expensive. So I guess you would be better off getting a cargo bike yourself, and then like a manual one, and then putting a hub motor into it. So I guess that's it. So if you're still here, leave a like on the video, subscribe to see more content like this. I'll see you in the next video. See you soon.